Service members of Reddit, what is your worst military wife story? On my last deployment I re-upped for 3 more and got a $35,000 bonus. Since I was overseas it was non-taxable income. After coming home I learned I had stage 3 colon cancer. 3 days after my last chemo treatment she told me she had been fricking around the whole time, drained all of my pay, the bonus, and sold my truck. She was a therapist. OMG, I'm so sorry, that is absolutely disgusting. I hope you're okay. This isn't my story and it happened at a fire station, so if this doesn't meet the criteria I apologize. There's a firefighter who used to pay another firefighter for work for him, so that FFA could go home for the day and have sex with FFB's wife. Afterwards she would give him the money that he would then use to pay FFB to work for him again. What the actual frick? Well, I was in the Navy. My husband was a civilian. We married young like all service members do at 19. We grew up in the same city and dated for several years. I thought I knew the guy inside and out. He had some anger issues but nothing out of the ordinary for a 19-year-old dude. I deployed to Afghanistan almost immediately and that's when things changed. Some other base wife told him that I was freaking dudes in porta potties, which I was not. He started doing H at some point. Started selling drugs to base wives, absolutely trashed my house. He sold everything and drained my account. Thousands of dollars in deployment money gone. He left base never to return. My 2 dogs were left in the house, did more and more damage, and were taken to the Humane Society where I paid hundreds to get them back. He hung out with a Japanese girl off base until my return. They got pregnant. Then he started to follow me and threaten me. Anyways, we got divorced and his psycho mother continued to threaten me for several years. Overall very fun experience. Would rate 4/10. I was deployed to Iraq and had a fiancée at the time. She called off the engagement because she said I was too controlling. It turns out that not wanting her to go to bars and dance topless is considered controlling. I later found out she was already sleeping with another soldier from another unit. Probably wouldn't have been a happy marriage anyways. At least now you can say that when you were deployed in Iraq you dodged a bullet. I was in with a guy that proposed to a girl back home that he barely knew. He bought her a car that she complained about but still accepted. He doesn't even have a car and asks for rides everywhere. He got her an apartment back in their hometown and pays her rent. He sends her his entire paycheck to her to help her take care of her son and get anything else she needs. He would tell me fishy things about her that made it obvious she was cheating. Out of nowhere she gets pregnant and stops talking to him completely. I tell him to get a DNA and he refused. Of course a couple months later the baby is born and looks nothing like him. He gets the test and it's not his daughter. He later found out the baby was by the first kid's basketball coach. The coach tells my friend he's a good father and I am gonna fall back and let you raise her. Dad, my friend is still with her to this day and she refuses to marry him. When I was stationed in Germany, my best friend was having an affair with his boss's wife. They wound up coming back to the US and getting married. And my boss's wife, who was friends with her, started coming onto me. I eventually had to do a "it's not you, it's me" thing to discourage her. Sergeant was at a party with a couple lower enlisted they had been friends with for years. SGT got hammered, and poor PVT's wife took advantage of that, and the other 3 guys in the room. They're still married, but there was a huge investigation behind it. Happened in 2004 when we got back from the Iraq invasion and such. We had just hit Bangor, Maine, and some vets had cell phones that were donated for us to call and tell our loved ones that we were just hours from reunion. This sergeant called his wife. "Whole deployment, no issues. All is good." Or so he thought. We hear a string of cursing like only an infantryman could in this cell go flying like a scud across the terminal. So apparently she decided to wait until he was just a few hours from home after a year of combat to say she was divorcing him. She had left him negative a few hundred in the bank account. What she didn't throw out was now in a couple of trash bags in his truck. Crappy old beater, unsecure, unlocked in the barracks parking lot. He was remarried within 2 months. There were no classy winners or losers in this story. No animals were harmed and no coat hangers bloodied. Not a member of the armed services, but I knew this soldier whose wife cheated on him over a dozen times while he was stationed overseas. Edit: I didn't like his wife and avoided her like the plague. Didn't find out about what she'd done until after he divorced her, but my girlfriend's husband is in Iraq fighting for your freedom. When my mother-in-law gave birth to my now wife, she was advised to make a sandwich or two in case her husband got hungry while she was delivering her child. Her husband did not attend the delivery, so all she had in the delivery room was a drill sergeant yelling at her to push. When she got home, the father had his car engine disassembled on the table. He asked whether she'd had a boy or girl, got told girl, said oh and went back to his engine. He really wanted a boy to carry on the family name, but when, in an attempt to save the relationship, they had a boy together, he moved out shortly afterward and never, or rarely, spoke to the son again. The son changed his last name to his mother's name as soon as he legally could. Freaking bastard. I was in an E-club in San Diego one time. An announcement came over the speakers in the club saying that the USS blah blah was immediately returning to port. The whole club empties out. On my first deployment we had a comb guy that was dumber than a bag of hammers. His wife wasn't much brighter. We didn't have any steady communication with back home, so the days we had phones or internet access were always a big deal. Well, one of those phone days he came in all excited saying that his wife told him she was 3 months pregnant 4 months into the deployment. He did his rounds of telling everyone all excited, and I don't think anyone had the heart to tell him to think about the math. We get back from deployment and when his son was born he came out looking a little different than what everyone expected. His wife was Mexican, so I guess that was enough to convince him that everything was okay. To be fair, to be 4 weeks pregnant you'd have had sex 2 weeks ago, so a discrepancy of a few weeks isn't proof of anything. Your pregnancy is dated from the first day of your period. You ovulate 2 weeks after that. If I told my husband I was 6 weeks pregnant and he argued we only had sex 4 weeks ago, he'd be wrong. My roommate when I got my first duty station at Drum. This guy fricks another soldier's wife in the troop. Platoon for non-cav. Other soldier finds out, gets heavily drunk and was going to come to the barracks and shoot him. I was the only one in the room that night. Luckily, he passed out in the driver's seat with the car running and his foot on the gas pedal. Nothing happened to other dude or my roommate. We had another shitbag who just wouldn't do anything right. This dude brought nothing on the packing list to a rotation at JRTC at featuring poke. Dude gets scabies and is forced to wash everything he brought with him, which wasn't a lot. We all got chewed out BC. We didn't look out for our battle buddy. We had a female get go just to not deploy to Afghan, but our orders got switched and instead of Afghan we go to Iraq and she came too. Dude was tag teaming a girl with a friend and she got pregnant. The guy I knew took full responsibility and married the girl, who was also a stripper during the week. Kid wasn't his, but he stayed and had 2 more kids with her. He was a smart guy and we all told him to bail when the kid wasn't his, but he stayed. She also had an 8th grade education and was the dumbest person I had ever met. That must have been some top shelf banging. Oh boy, buckle up. This happened over the course of 3 3-month deployments over a 2-year period. First deployment, I came back to my wife and a big stack of mail. In them were 2 notices of repossession for non-payment of my car, 3 final notices for all of our utilities, and a letter from the landlord. I started off with the car, since I didn't want it to be repossessed. I went to our joint bank account and found it empty. No bills had been paid in 3 months. When I asked her about what happened to all of our money, she said, I went to Waffle House a lot. Second deployment, I came back to a house with 4 dogs and 3 cats. There was the outside garbage can sitting in the middle of the living room. Oh, and a homeless guy was sleeping on my couch. She, apparently, had taken to volunteering at the local animal shelter and had to save all these animals from being euthanized. The backyard had no grass left from the dogs digging. The carpets were torn up from the feral cats, and there were pile of dog crap, petrified, all over the house. When asked about the garbage can, she said that it was just too hard to take the trash out. When asked about the homeless guy, she said that she had met him at Waffle House and he just needed some help. The third deployment, I came back to my wife having 2 new make friends. After paling around with them for a couple months, a different girl friend told me that my wife had been cheating on me with these 2 guys. When I asked about the cheating, she said she only sucked his dong because it was Christmas and she hadn't gotten him a gift. Ugh. At no point do you write that you've divorced this woman, and I find that concerning. Not mine, but the wife of my CO of the training command I was in tried to have the Air Force Guard mastered for not saluting her. She was a civilian. My husband is in the army and we live on base. Our neighbor regularly beats the ever-loving crap out of his wife. One night when we first moved in, before we knew he was hitting her, we had them over for drinks and he was bragging about how much his first SGT loves him. He said verbatim, "I could beat her and no one would do anything about it because they freaking love me." I've personally called the MPS multiple times, and every time he came home after spending a few days in the barracks, before he left she pretty much lived at our house because of his abuse. They are 25-28, living in Osaka. She has no family and nowhere to go and she was too scared to leave. Now that he's deployed, I've been helping her pack her crap so she can get out of here before he gets back. She even has a job lined up in the lower 48. Most of these stories are about women cheating and spending too much money in their air, and many about how abusive the soldier can be as well. Signed up in the Navy to go to Japan. Got assigned to my first ship in Japan. Captain hated his wife. Saw many other lovely countries that weren't Japan. Epilogue. Captain finally rotated out. Get orders to go to Iraq for 16 months. I worked in postal. In Italy. There's so many military wives that come and screaming that their husband is a captain, general, whatever, so you totally need to let her mail wine to her friends in the States. Sure, lady, I'll totally break federal law because you are married to one of 24 captains sitting in this base. They screamed louder when I explained that it was illegal. This happened at least twice a week. Couldn't get out of Italy fast enough. Well, there was that time a group of Midway wives, mostly from PI, were running a prostitution co-op out of base housing. On the nights they were working, one would take all the kids and babysit. The rest would work Club A and use their homes as freak cribs. A whole lot of husbands came back early from that deployment. The guy on Diego Garcia who was being counseled about paying his bills back home when a notice came in from Navy Relief that his spouse in Subic kept coming in for emergency loans and he was not supporting her. Turns out he'd married a nice girl in a church ceremony in Subic so he could screw her, then just cut contact. He already had a wife and kids in the US. Worst military spouse. Not wife, but it was fairly awful. Flown off the island in under 48 hours. One of our older guys went home on leave and came back married to a stripper. He brought her over. She showed up wearing a gold diamond encircled Kruger and she's gotten from her previous husband. We were hosting reservists at a party at my apartment. She said, "Kiss my butt." One guy said, "Bear it." She hopped on the low table and pulled down her pants and panties and spread it. Nope. Out of my home. She began cheating in the afternoons with a guy off the Midway, not even married a year. Our guy sent her back to the States, but our command made him come in for muster the day of the packout. By the time he got home, she had taken everything except his clothes. Turned up pregnant with twins, but never could prove they were his. Not sure if the other guy wised up or not. Oh, I have so many more. I knew a Marine once. He was married with a kid. We'll call him Jeff. There was a female Marine in Jeff's shop who was married to a civilian. We'll call her Annie. She was the only female in the shop. She wasn't very attractive, but Marines will frick anything. Annie was fricking everyone and anyone in their shop while her civilian husband was out of town during the week working at his civilian job. Jeff left his wife for Annie. Annie and Jeff eventually married and are married to this day. I was looking at a reunion group on Facebook of Jeff and Annie's old unit. Annie and Jeff were interacting with one of Annie's old frick buddies who didn't know they had married. It was fricking hilarious. You could just see the guy, in the chat conversation, slowly connecting the dots that Jeff's current wife was not his first wife, but rather he was now married to Annie, the town pump. Dude was engaged to girl. He paid for her housing and tuition for a semester. One day he got DM'd by a girl trying to hit on him. He blocked her and told his fiancée about it. His fiancée broke up with him on the spot. Hasn't paid him back any of the money. This was quite a while back in the Marines, and still is probably a big reason why I just don't trust people in general. I was a LCPL at the time, admin of course. One day my OP came up to me and brought me to another room with my gunny and our perso. This guy was EOD and had just got back from a 12-month deployment in Afghanistan where he got promoted and re-enlisted. For those unfamiliar with it, if you re-enlist while overseas it's tax-free income. His re-enlistment bonus for EOD and SSGT was $80k. He had a wife and 3 kids. I don't know anything about their relationship before this, but he seemed like an average guy laid back when we were talking. 3 weeks before he came home she bolted with the kids, moved back to the States, blew all of his money and put him in $10k credit card debt. She had been sleeping with his entire shop on the other side of the base. Only 5 guys and a female people in the unit because they were a really small detachment on our base that I didn't even know about until this guy came in. Adding to the crappy side of all this, because of the time that she left to the time that he came in, he was receiving too much money from benefits and we were basically going to have to dock his pay for another $3k. I can't quite remember the exact amount. Long story short, Oil and Perso worked some secret squirrel crap and we stopped his pay from being docked. He was still but out an $80k tax-free bonus and $10k in debt without any way to find out where his wife took the kids and forced to work in a shop where everyone fricked his wife. I still feel bad for the guy and always heard stories like this. It just really shocked me to see it happen firsthand. Felt like crap knowing that was all we could do to help him. But there is no harder fricking than getting fricked by that big green weenie. Needless to say, I didn't try to start any relationships in my last 2 years of service. The private was deployed to Iraq and the wife couldn't handle him being gone and her taking care of their 3-month-old daughter that she turned on the hot water of the bath and left the daughter in there for hours until she complained to the housing office of a bad smell. This story is vanilla compared to the other stories of adultery and murder in this thread. Let me preface this by saying a solid 99.99% of spouses I encountered were delightful, yet the awful ones are burned in my memory. The following conversation occurred not so long ago in front of the PX on Camp Lejeune. A dependent was unloading boxes of what I assume were Girl Scout cookies. She turned her attention to me as I walked by. DP, hey there devil dog, give us a hand. Me, excuse me mom, but who are you? DP, my husband is a gunny, and I just told you to help me. Me, oh, actually mom, you have no authority on board this installation. Your spouse's rank is irrelevant. DP, excuse me? Me, I said you don't have any authority here. I don't care what rank your husband is. DP, oh Marine, you sure you want to play this game? Me, it's not a game mom. Have a good day. I began to walk away. DP, I'm gonna find your command and tell them how disrespectful you were. Me, that's your choice mom. If you reach them, tell them I told you to go frick yourself too. DP, excuse me. Me, I said go frick yourself. I caught a little heat for cursing loudly in front of the PX, but that was about it. I was a young company commander just getting the hang of running an HHC. Little did I know that an HHC is where you hide your dirtbags that you don't want to interact with regular troops. So a SSG who I met maybe once or twice worked in the motor pool. He just got back from some course and has some big blow up with his wife. He rapes her at gunpoint in front of his children and takes off in his car. The MPs respond when she calls them and they are taking her statement when he pulls up in his car. Realizing everything was going to crap, he peels out and a high-speed chase ensues. He decides to end it all and shoots himself in the head with a handgun. He loses control of his car and crashes into a bridge. Despite all that, he survives. Not fully there to be sure, but still breathing and talking. As soon as he is well enough, we put him in prison. I'm working with JAG to get this dude in Leavenworth, but the wife turned into a super advocate for her husband who is apparently a lot nicer due to his brain injury. Due to her not willing to testify, the heavy charges could not be proved. The army eventually dropped all the charges and found his injuries to be a line of duty yes. At the time, I was beyond furious to let this dirtbag walk, even in his diminished state, but I've softened over the years. His wife made some smart decisions and was able to provide for her family and her husband leveraging military benefits. Not exactly a feel-good story. I remember it taking up most of my time for over a year. Not me, but another dependent. This was back in the early 90s when my husband was stationed at Bragg. He goes over to a good friend's house for drinking and cards. I stayed home with the kids because I couldn't stand the friend's wife. Turned out I was right. So, my husband, his friend's wife and 2 of her friends are all sitting around drinking and playing cards. Friend gets called in because they need a jump master. He kinda knew it was coming so he wasn't drinking. My husband at this point has had a few too many and can't drive home because we live a bit from Bragg. No problem. Friend tells him to hang out and sober up to drive, and off he goes. My husband, the guy's wife and her friends continue to play cards, but now my husband is drinking coffee. A few hours later, one of the friends leaves, the other needs a ride home. My husband offers to drive since he's pretty much sober now. Friend's wife offers to drive with them, so that my husband isn't alone with her friend, who is unmarried, and, according to wife, OS, yay, right. Next morning, after I'm done yelling because he walked in the house at 5 AM, after leaving for a few beers at 7 PM the night before, he informs me of what happened and then tells me that one of the women told him, "I know you're married, but I'd love to lock you in a room for 2 hours and frick your brains out." He refused to tell me which one said it, so I go to his friend's wife, not thinking. It was 6 years later, after my husband got out, that I found out it was his friend's wife. I also found out that she was fricking anyone in uniform the minute her husband was out the door. No, my husband didn't take her up on her offer, he just thanked her for the compliment. About 5 years ago he hooked up with that friend again, who had divorced the B, and told him what had happened. When my husband apologized for not letting the guy know, his friend told him not to worry about it. Apparently my husband was the only one of this guy's friends to turn the B down. I saw a lot of crap going on when we lived on Bragg and off, but this was the one time another dependent messed with my own family. My SGT's wife still needed to become a legal citizen. When we deployed she got arrested for selling alcohol to an underage undercover cop. Yay, manufactured crimes. So while we're deployed my SGT and most of my command is spending extra time and effort trying to fight the legal system in the US and keep them from deporting her back to Mexico due to her now being a criminal and also overstaying her work visa. So my command and the SGT fight and eventually win. Wife gets to stay in the country and gets to become a citizen. Fast forward 2 months and it turns out his wife's brother is not actually her brother but her boyfriend, and my SGT's daughter has been calling her father uncle for a few years. The wife's family apparently knew that the daughter belonged to the boyfriend who was also in the country illegally and just never said anything, so that the daughter would be claimed by my SGT and be considered a US citizen and it would help the wife get citizenship. Now this woman, her boyfriend, and her entire family were in on a plan to help the wife get citizenship through an active duty Marine. I'm not saying I think they planned the conception or anything, but an opportunity arose and they took it. In my book they are all human scum and I hope the daughter never learns about any of this. My SGT eventually, and still is, in deep denial about the daughter now being his and believes his wife simply cheated on him. He forgave her and they are still married 8 years later. I need some sort of diagram. Maybe I'm tired. Holy frick, this is confusing. Attended a friend's wedding while I was in the Marines. He was another Marine in my unit. Drove out 2 hours from base for the wedding. Wedding goes well. He finds her smoking pot during the reception. Any other time it wouldn't be a big deal, but in the military it's a big no-no. Also she had hidden it from him the entire relationship. Best not to find out there are secrets being kept from you on your wedding day. This was all 2 months before a 1-year deployment to Iraq. Needless to say, they were getting divorced before we made it back stateside. I told this one here before. I'm a teacher and this happened in the district I teach in. A serviceman was off on duty and his wife was taking care of their 3 kids. 2 of the kids were in school and the district gives free breakfast and lunch to all kids. The other child was an infant. The oldest child was in kindergarten and brought food home trying to feed the infant. The infant starved to death and the other children survived only because of free lunch. I know lots of money was raised for the serviceman and his kids. I believe he remarried. I can't find the articles to link, but this one really bothers me. As a teacher I try my best I give kids food to take home over the holiday breaks because some of them are so neglected. It's just sickening. I know a guy who was in the service back in Iraq, and not only did his girlfriend fake her age, her whole family was complicit in faking her age. So right before he got married he found out he was marrying 16-year-old, but at that point he had to go through with it, because if he didn't, the family was going to press statutory rape charges. Then her family tried to pay one of the guys in his unit to friendly fire kill him so the family would get money. Sucks because I know quite a few military wives who have horror stories about getting cheated on. Goes both ways I guess. Goes both ways I guess. It definitely does. My husband just got back from deployment and told me within the first 2 weeks their people were fricking people who weren't their spouses. I'm not in the military, but a girl in my HS art class got married in spring of her senior year to her boyfriend of 6 months cause they were planning on going into the Marines. I understand there's some advantage to that because she explained it. The part that makes it bad is that they didn't go out on dates together for those 6 months of dating other than going to the gym together. I've posted this before. Friend got married right after HS. Left for boot camp and deployed soon after. Gave his wife power of attorney. She destroyed his credit and put him $200K in debt in 8 months. They divorced, but his CO advised him to just give her whatever she wants to keep her quiet. So now he's also paying alimony. It sucks because he only joined the military to pay for college. But now he's afraid he won't be able to afford it even with a GI Bill. My stepdad's ex-wife forced him to get out of the army under threat of leaving him. So he did. Ended up working as a Domino's delivery driver among other things to support her and their 2 kids. Well, she decided to cheat on him anyway, and finally kicked him out of the house out of nowhere because she wanted to leave him for the guy she was cheating with. Even told the kids to call the new guy daddy, and threw out the letters my stepdad wrote to the kids. She realized the mistake she made, but he wouldn't take her back. He'd moved on, joined the National Guard, and met my mom. After he married my mom, the woman got extremely bitter and jealous. My stepdad had missed a couple child support payments due to my mom undergoing cancer treatment and such, and the ex-wife let it go, until about 17 years later when the kids were in their 30s and had families of their own. The county began garnishing his wages for the unpaid support and thousands that had racked up in fees. She had friends in the county court system, so she would just randomly freeze my stepdad and mom's bank account. Illegal, and have hundreds of dollars taken out. Also illegal, right around Christmas, so that we couldn't even afford to buy groceries. Even the county knew this case was a waste of resources and wanted to drop the debt, but not much they could really do with her meddling at every step. Even the kids said they didn't want the money because they knew how financially strained we were, so she had to throw in her own cash to sweeten the pot. Finally my stepdad paid the debt in full and she has no power over him now. Thank goodness. What a bee. When I was 18 I was dating a 23-year-old Air Force guy. He took me and 2 other guys from his unit to a party where other Air Force people were. Well, the couple that we're hosting were both in the Air Force and the wife was pregnant. The husband pulled me aside and asked if I had any music. I drove, so I went to my car to get some CDs. 2004. Came back, had him pick a few. The husband would not leave me alone, kept asking me to do things. I figured me and his wife were the only sober ones, so I kept helping. Things like making drinks, helping them set up beer pong or other games. Nothing weird. We had been there maybe 2 hours when my date grabbed me by the elbow and asked me to drive him back to his place to get more beer. Well, as we were driving back he started bitching about what in butthole the husband was and he just needed an excuse to get me out of there. I was so confused. It turns out that the husband was telling people that he was going to nail me that night. That I was doing favors for him to try and get everyone else drunk so we could be alone. Long story short, as soon as my date and I left, one of the friends I had originally taken there confronted the husband and they got into a huge brawl. The cops were called and both ended up getting kicked out. Looking back, I know my date was looking out for himself as much as me. I have no idea what happened to the wife, but she was super sweet, so I hope she got away from the creeper. I'm not a service member, but my brother was. He was Kia in 2011. At the funeral his wife screamed at my mother and told us all to sit in the back because she was more important. For 8 years now she has run around various news outlets and government agencies demanding more free Gold Star wife stuff. To date she has been given 2 houses, 6 figures worth of stipends, and multiple televised recognitions. She knew my brother for a total of 2 years, but they were barely together from first date to death. She acts like his family doesn't exist and she squashes any attempt by the rest of us to receive any sort of recognition. She has alienated all of the other Gold Star wives in her support circle and constantly belittles other fallen soldiers. The last thing he said about her, about 2 weeks before his death, is that when he returns to the States he's fixing his mistake and divorcing her for being a real piece of crap. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.